The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the neon signs of downtown into smears of colored light. Officer Brandon Davis sat his parked cruiser, his windshield wipers slapping a rhythmic, hypnotic beat. He was bored, frustrated, and looking for a reason to pull someone over before his shift ended at midnight. That was when the sleek, midnight blue Mercedes-Benz S-Class glided past his position. It was a flawless vehicle, costing well over $100,000, and it looked entirely out of place in this neighborhood. Davis narrowed his eyes. He leaned forward, wiping the condensation off his side window to get a better look. As the luxury sedan paused at a red light under the street lamp, the driver's side window rolled down slightly to clear the mist. Davis caught a glimpse of the man behind the wheel, a middle-aged black man wearing a dark hoodie. Instantly, a narrative formed in Davis's mind. A young-looking black man in a hoodie driving a top-of-the-line Mercedes through a working-class district at 11:30 p.m. didn't add up to him. In Davis's mind, it screamed one thing: stolen vehicle. Without checking the license plate database or waiting for backup, Davis slammed the cruiser into drive, flipped on his red and blue emergency lights, and surged out into the rainy street, pulling directly behind the Mercedes. The luxury car didn't flee. It didn't speed up. Instead, it signaled properly, slowed down, and pulled over safely into the empty parking lot of a closed bank. Davis put his cruiser in park, unclipped the safety strap on his holster, and stepped out into the pouring rain. He walked with a heavy, intimidating stride, keeping his flashlight beamed directly onto the driver's side mirror to blind the occupant. Davis tapped his heavy metal flashlight aggressively against the driver's side window. Thud, thud, thud. The window rolled down smoothly, revealing the man in the hoodie. His expression wasn't one of fear or panic. It was an expression of deep, exhausted patience. "License and registration," Davis demanded, his voice dripping with authority. "And keep your hand where I can see them. Don't make any sudden moves." The driver kept his hands firmly on the steering wheel. "Good evening, officer," the man said, his voice remarkably calm, deep, and measured. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over? I was driving under the speed limit, and my lights are fully functioning." Davis bristled at the question. He didn't like being interrogated by suspects. "You're being pulled over because this vehicle matches the description of a car reported stolen in the metro area," Davis lied smoothly, using a classic tactic to justify the stop. "Furthermore, you look a little young to be driving a vehicle of this caliber. I need you to step out of the car right now." "Officer, I can assure you this car is not stolen," the driver replied, making no move to exit. "The registration and insurance are in the glove compartment. If you allow me to reach for them, I can prove ownership immediately." "I said step out of the car," Davis shouted, his hand dropping to the grip of his firearm. "I'm not going to ask you again. Step out. Put your hands on the roof, or I will remove you for noncompliance and grand theft auto." The driver sighed softly, a look of profound disappointment crossing his face. "Very well, officer. I am exiting the vehicle. Please do not escalate this unnecessarily." The man opened the door and stepped out into the rain. He was tall, carrying himself with an unmistakable air of dignity that Davis completely ignored. Davis roughly grabbed the man's arm, spinning him around and forcing him against the wet metal of the Mercedes, clicking a pair of handcuffs tightly onto wrists.
With the driver detained in the back of the police cruiser, Davis returned to the Mercedes to search for evidence of the theft. He opened the driver's door and began rummaging through the center console. He didn't find drugs, weapons, or a punched ignition. Instead, everything was pristine. He opened the glove compartment and pulled out the vehicle's registration packet, along with a thick leather wallet that had been left on the passenger seat. Davis opened the wallet, looking for a driver's license to run through his computer. He pulled out a card expecting to see a fake ID or a long rap sheet. Instead, his eyes fell upon a heavy gold-embossed identification card issued by the state government. Right next to it was a standard driver's license. The name on both cards read, "The Honorable Arthur J. Vance." Davis blinked, the rain dripping from the brim of his hat onto the plastic card. He looked at the gold-embossed card again. It didn't say state employee, it read, Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. A cold sweat broke out on Davis's neck, completely independent of the freezing rain. He looked from the car to the back of his cruiser where the man in the hoodie was sitting quietly. Chief Justice Arthur Vance was one of the most powerful legal minds in the state. He was a man who routinely reviewed cases of police misconduct, a man whose judicial opinions shaped the very laws Davis was supposed to enforce, and a man who personally knew the governor, the mayor, and Davis's own police chief. Davis's hands began to shake slightly. He realized with terrifying clarity that the man he had just aggressively slammed against a car and handcuffed wasn't a car thief. He was the highest-ranking judicial official in the entire state commonwealth. Davis walked back to his cruiser, his knees feeling like jelly. He opened the back door, his arrogant demeanor completely shattered. With fumbling, trembling fingers, he unlocked the handcuffs and reached out to help the man step out of the vehicle. "Your Honor, I am incredibly sorry," Davis stammered, his face pale. "There was a misunderstanding. The vehicle description, I thought—" Justice Vance stepped out of the cruiser, smoothing down his wet hoodie. He didn't yell. He didn't lose his temper. Instead, he adjusted his glasses and looked down at Officer Davis with a gaze that had withered the state's top prosecutors in Supreme Court hearings. "There was no misunderstanding, Officer Davis," Justice Vance said, reading the name tag on the cop's chest. "You didn't check the plates. You didn't wait for a dispatch report. You saw a black man in a hooded sweatshirt driving an expensive car, and you made an assumption based entirely on prejudice. You violated my Fourth Amendment rights within 30 seconds of meeting me." "Sir, please, it was just a mistake," Davis pleaded, realizing his career was flashing before his eyes. "A mistake is misreading a license plate, officer," Justice Vance interrupted, his voice cutting through the sound of the rain like a gavel striking wood. "What you did tonight was an abuse of color of authority. If I were an ordinary young citizen without my credentials, tonight could have ended in a tragedy. That is unacceptable." Justice Vance walked back to his Mercedes, took his wallet and registration from Davis's shaking hands, and got into the driver's seat. Before pulling away, he rolled down the window one last time. "I will be speaking directly with Chief Harrison first thing in the morning," Justice Vance said quietly. "I suggest you spend the rest of your night reviewing the Constitution you swore an oath to protect. You are going to need a very good understanding of it for your disciplinary hearing." The Mercedes shifted into drive and glided silently out of the parking lot, leaving Officer Davis standing alone in the pouring rain, fully aware that his career in law enforcement was effectively over.